So sometimes whenever you finish a mission or once you get through a chapter, you'll get a bunch of new parts available for purchase, and this is how you unlock more stuff in this store, right? So we just finished chapter 1, which was a single mission. Oh boy. But you'll see we get these 10 units of FRS memory, which we'll go over that later. And then, you know, we acquired a couple of schematics, which you can basically load up and go into a simulator to try out different stock builds, similar to the ones that we got to pick between at the beginning of the game. So if I go to the garage, which is called Axis, go in here, spin around, you'll see our emblem in the bottom left corner, which defaults to this guy with the book. Don't really know what that's supposed to be. And you've got a couple options here, right? You got some, you can go in and, well, first we have to make something new since it doesn't want us editing the stock mech. You can go in here, edit weapons, the actual mech itself, your boosters. There's a lot to go over. Basically, here's all your parts, right? You got a head. It's mostly going to determine all of your sensors, some of your stability, and I mean, really that's it. Some of them might have some extra features. You got your core, which is going to determine most of your defensive ability, has the majority of your AP, which is armor points, which is just health, and then also has your primal armor, rectification, and durability. Again, lots and lots of numbers you can go over later if you prefer. You got your arms, kind of determines how quickly you're going to shoot things, well, how quickly you aim at things. Legs, there's a pretty big variety. You're going to have like quads, bipeds, which all come in like light, medium, heavy, reverse joint. You don't have a whole lot of options at the beginning though. But the biggest difference just comes through how mobile you are and how much weight you can actually put on the mech. As well as defense. Obviously the tank legs are going to be the slowest, but they have a massive amount of defense and AP. And we're just going to stick with these medium ones. One, because we don't really have any money to buy anything else. And two, because they're pretty good all around. Fire control system basically just determines how many locks you can actually hold, how big the area is that you can lock onto, determines your radar, things like that. And a generator, which is I'd say probably the most important part of a build, determines like your total power output, how quickly you regenerate it, how many Kojima particles you put out, which is basically determines how quickly your shield regenerates and how much you can overboost for. And it's also pretty expensive, so it's going to take us a little bit to upgrade that. Like I was saying earlier, you've got 4 types of boosters, so main, back, side, and over. With over boost, or the over booster being exclusively for over boost. Side, how quickly you can boost side to side, back, which determines how quickly you can boost back. It's mostly useful for quick boosting away from people. And then you've got your main booster, which is the one you're going to be using most of the time because it determines how quickly you can fly up, what sort of thrust you get, and then how much energy you're using as you're doing that normal basic slide around on the ground. And we'll go into weapons. Got your wide variety of weapons, not a whole lot of options right now, again, until we start unlocking more stuff. We've got right arm, right back, left back. You've got something in your shoulders, which if you got the weight to spare, you can put in things like flares, which can throw off missiles, ECMs, which can kind of help with being stealthy, though it's kind of iffy. It's mostly for throwing off people's lock-ons. And you've got 2 hanger weapons, which are generally like a pistol size or smaller. And basically what happens is once your right arm or left arm runs out of ammo, then you'll automatically swap to one of these hanger weapons. So on heavyweight builds, you can actually be bringing a pretty massive amount of ammunition, even if you have something with really low ammo counts like these bazookas, which only have like 32 rounds each. Then you've got stabilizers. So this is where it starts to get really finicky. You can actually determine essentially your balance of the mech. What a lot of people would wind up doing for this is putting the center of balance either extremely far forward or extremely far back, and that essentially kind of help them with doing quick boosts forward or back and kind of changing their momentum. You can set to auto-tune it so that it'll just put stabilizers all over the place in order to bring your momentum just back to center. Really center of mass back to the center. And they come in all these like cool little styles. They're pretty neat. You can use the really obnoxious ones on the back here to kind of decorate with. Come in these antenna styles and stuff like that. And yes, you can stick them all over the place. It gets really ridiculous. The only bad thing being that it does add a little bit of extra weight, even if it makes you look cooler. So if you wanted a really hyper optimal, super lightweight mech, you might actually not put any of these on here. And then this is where we use the FRS memory. So basically what happens is it gives you a little bit of option to kind of tune things up. So what it lets you do is say you go to capacity, you go to legs. If we've got 10 units of memory, we can increase the amount of weight that our legs can carry, which is very, very useful later on once you actually have a lot more memory, because you can take really lightweight legs that might normally not be able to carry all that much, and then you'll be able to boost the weight loading enough in order to actually have like a decent weapons load. Probably more importantly, you can increase your energy output, which becomes really important for boosting, being able to just constantly chain quick boosts and fly left and right all over the place. And as you can see, it gets very, very involved. It's pretty useful for actually changing up the different types of builds, and when multiplayer was still alive, allowed you to have a lot more variety instead of just trying to go with whatever meta people had come up with. And then you can just go ahead and finish it out, save up the load. You've got some paint options, which you can do all sorts of fun things with. There's a lot of stock color patterns you can go with. Just change it to something nice and red. I don't think they really give you anything too bright. Never mind, let's do this. Nice solid neon colors. You can also change up pattern, right? Get different types of camouflage. Cool digital camo or whatever. Nothing super extravagant though. Well, I don't know. Maybe those are a little bit goofy. Let's stick to plain for now. You can color your stabilizers, weapons, everything differently, so you can get pretty out of hand with that. And then here's sort of the sad part compared to some of the other ones. So here's your emblem editor, right? Might be saying, hey, I remember you could do all sorts of things with layers, like in the newer ones, where you have, say, you know, a bunch of layers in basic shapes that you can mess around with. Or in the really old ones, you actually just had like a 126 by 126 like pixel palette you could mess with. Well, this one, unfortunately, does not have anything nearly as good. As you'll see, you get a whole 16 layers to work with, and you don't really get that many shapes to mess around with. So there's not like a huge amount of variety. Yeah, you can come up with some pretty interesting things, though, maybe. I don't know. It's kind of a bummer. But maybe we can go back and see what we can figure out later. You can also go back into the tutorial, and then you can go into a little test area, which I'll go ahead and go into that right now. Basically, you can just load this area up to test out new builds, see how they handle, get used to maybe some of the new things you might need to do. Maybe if you want to practice blading. Oh yeah, one other thing I think I forgot to show was that now, if you stand still, you can do these quick boosts to turn you all the way around. Or at least most of the way around. It's about 90 degrees. And it'll require you to cool down for a little bit, but it's still extremely useful. Especially if you wind up in some of these fights where you're fighting a very light, very fast enemy, and you're in something heavier like this. They get behind you. It's not quite as much of a disaster as it might be in any other game, really. And as you can see, you can chain everything together pretty quickly. That's gonna wear through your energy. So one of the first things I want to do is get a upgraded engine. You can also add in targets. Shit'll kick you out real quick, drop you back in, and give you somebody to shoot at. Man, that is a tiny lockbox. Where'd he go? Oh, I guess I got him. Yeah, we're back out of this. And you can also go in and load up schematics. Later on, once we unlock it, you'll be able to go in and do arena fights for extra money and FRS memory and parts, but it doesn't actually unlock until I think the end of the chapter when we start getting those packs. Basically, you have this option called Simulator that you can load up and go into. And you've got your missions you can pick from. It'll only ever give you 4 at a time. Luckily, it'll tell you whenever one of the missions get triggered at the end of the chapter, so you can finish everything else up before you do that. But at the end, it doesn't really matter a huge amount. Well, I guess it does, because you have to finish missions first before you can go back. But once you finish a chapter, you can go back and replay them as free missions. This one doesn't really have a whole lot of money grinding missions, but it does allow you to go back and play for replay things you've done before. And also you got hard mode, which will give you way more money, but also includes something ridiculous. For instance, if, hey, in this mission you were just supposed to fight one guy that was really difficult, now suddenly it's a 2-on-1 or a 3-on-1 or something. I can go back and show you some of the differences on those later.